Hey everyone. We're now adding some more detail into what we know about the way natural selection works. So firstly, I introduced it using our acronym of VISTA, where V is variation, I was inheritance, and reproduction. Sorry, I was just inheritance. S is survival and reproduction. And then T is time. And A is adaptation. So we'll add some more detail to what we know about these processes. Okay, so variation, we know from what we learned about genetics in the last topic. Variation is caused by different alleles in the population, which cause different traits. So, and we also remember that new alleles are caused by mutations. So an individual might have a mutation, and then they might have a mutation during meiosis, when they're making sperm or egg cells, and then that mutation will be passed on to their offspring, and that's going to cause some new variation to become part of the population. So new alleles caused by mutations. And then populations have a range of different alleles which cause variation in their phenotypes or their traits. Have a range of alleles which cause variation in the traits of the population. And that's what we call the gene pool. So the gene pool is different among all members of each population. Okay, inheritance. Well, we learnt lots about inheritance already, so we know that parents pass on their alleles to the next generation. And we also know that they're only passing a random 50% of their alleles to the next generation, and then the other 50% are coming from the other partner. So the mum passes 50% and the dad passes 50% at random. So we can say they're passing 50% of alleles to the next generation. And that's mixing up the gene pool, and it's causing variation every time there's a new generation, because there's not just different alleles, but the way that alleles are combined together is different every time someone breeds and has children. Then remember, there's survival and reproduction. So every species has different traits. There's variation, and that means some individuals are going to be much more likely to survive. And we talked about our brown and rabbit fur example, where the brown rabbits have a much higher chance of survival. So the high chance of survival was the brown, and that means they are the fittest. And remember, fittest just means you've got a better chance of surviving, and that means there's more of a chance that you'll breed and you'll have children to pass on your genes and continue the population. So that's why the phrase survival of the fittest came about. So there's actual survival in terms of how well suited you are to your environment, and there's also the fact that basically every species produces way more offspring then survive to adulthood. So many more offspring or children, basically, are produced than will survive. And that's because every ecosystem can only hold a certain number of species. Like if we look here at frogs, they produce hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of eggs, which hatch into tadpoles. Barely 1% of those tadpoles are going to grow up to become a frog. So it's the sad fact of life that all life is a struggle to survive. You're competing for food, competing for shelter. There's predators. There's diseases. So life is a constant struggle to survive. For animals, but for plants and for fungi and every living thing. And so because of that struggle to survive, it really depends on what traits you have and are they going to help you to survive? And are they going to make you fit enough so that you'll survive? Okay. We also talked about time and adaptation last time. So over enough generations, as the most fit individuals keep surviving and the least fit individuals either die early or they just don't breed as often, that means the population will change slightly each generation. So each population changes slightly in every generation. And for some species where they have generations of only a few days, like insects, or months, evolution can happen really quickly. There's plenty of examples where scientists can go out and actually observe how species change just within a few years even, because of natural selection. And so after enough time, there's going to be some visible changes that you can see, and that means that the species has become more adapted to living in its environment, like I said last time. So we talked about our brown rabbits last time. So this species of rabbits now has adapted to its environment because brown fur provides camouflage against the wolf predators. And if you look at any species, you can see what adaptations they have to their environment. So mountain goats here, they've evolved short legs, really thick wool for them to survive in the really harsh, cold mountains where they live. And if you look at cacti, they're extremely well adapted to living in deserts and areas where there's not much water. So they've lost their leaves through evolution because leaves lose water really easily. They've evolved spines to protect them from being eaten by herbivore predators because you can't afford to lose resources in a desert because there just isn't much water available to regrow parts of the plant. And of course they've evolved to store lots of water inside them as well, which helps them to survive during the huge periods where there's no rain. So every species has adapted to where it's living at the time through natural selection.